lined in their ones at our gigs, prepared to slake their thirst on molten gristle.
Oh, Jesus.
Jesus wept.
Oh, boy, oh, boy. I remember this.
This train is ready to depart, is all we need to say, I think.
Yes! Hi, music friends! Here we are in the pedal show lair. Dudley's favorite chord. Hi!
Hey, everyone. Welcome to that Potrtals show. Dan here.
Mick here.
I'm Gregory S. Koch Esquire, and I'm here in fair Albion to cause some trouble.
Indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Mr. Greg Koch joining us today on tour in the UK and just causing general mischief.
That's a fact.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to experiment if I can sustain myself solely on the English breakfast and fish and chips. A glorious combination. It is fueling some rather interesting interactions with my digestive activity. But you know what? You don't need to know that. You don't need to know anything about that.
We should also say we've got some good friends in the room. We have Toby Lee Marshall, of course, from Greg Koch Trio.
Yep.
Koch Marshall Trio, I should say. Let's get it right. We have Dudley Ross, our old friend, and we have Yanis from Jam Pedals in the room.
Yeah.
Yanni!
And somewhere there is a not-so-mini version of Greg running around.
Yes. He's in the other room engaging in fiendish cyber hijinks.
Yeah.
Dylan, who makes
Dylan
up
Koch.
the trio.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, your son on drums.
Yes, he is a beastly creature.
Yeah.
He's not afraid. I don't know where he gets it from.
What's it like touring with your son?
Well, it's a blast, to be honest. I mean, early on, when he was a little wilder, now he's nothing but a beacon of wholesomeness, much like his old man.
Yeah, lovely.
But in our initial forays into the great unknown, he's a little popular with the opposite sex, and so there'd be situations where I saw things. Okay.
That no father's meant to see?
Well, so like as a parent, I was horrified, but as a band member, I was impressed. I was like, oh, what? His closure rate was high. Damn. So and then my wife would call, concerned about Dylan. Is he okay? Is he having a good time?
He's
I was
really
like,
good.
He's fine. He's doing just fine.
Dylan, this is what you get when you're not in the room. Just so.
That's right. That's right. But we have a blast. We have a good old time. Between Toby, me, and Dylan, of course, we got Dudley with us, who's a champion. But back when we're in the States, it's just the three of us. And we come and go when we please. We figure out the hotels the day of. Hey, you guys want to go here and get this food? And Dylan's like a big foodie, so he's always on his phone like, I found the places. And
nice.
And he's never wrong.
Amazing.
And so we feast like warriors of old. And then, of course, we proceed to open up a can of whoop-ass at every joint we go to, scalding brains hither and yon, coast to coast, border to border, melted faces. That's what we do. This isn't a game. This is not a game we're playing here. This is reality. And, well, kind of.
Is it? I don't know anymore.
It's a little non-reality, but... Anyway, what were we talking about?
We have a bunch of things to cover. some Koch Marshall Trio new music coming up, which you can tell us about.
Yes.
You can't have failed to have noticed this.
Look at this thing.
It's a beast.
It's the Koch Ness Monster Supreme.
Oh, I wanted you to deliver it.
Sorry.
The Koch Ness Monster Supreme.
And there is also the Koch Ness Monster.
Yes.
So we'll come on to talk about that in a sec. An S-shaped object from Reverend as well.
Yes.
Which we can come on to.
Yeah, we'll work on that later.
Which we can get to. New music. Tell us about new music amongst the revelry.
Well, it's we put out a new vinyl record earlier this year, as a matter of fact. And so that was well and good. But I've been doing some stuff with Devin Allman, who's Greg Allman's son, who does the Allman Betts band. And I've been doing some of those Allman Betts family reunion. I'm like a huge Allman Brothers fan. And let me tell you, when you're on stage with the 2-drummer thing and you're doing whipping post, I got to tell you, my nostrils flare with a vehemence unparalleled. There's a level of musical turgidity that happens that is almost a little ditty-like. You know what I'm saying? I just want to call security and jail myself after such an experience. That was weird. Sorry. So what were we talking about? Anyway, so Devin was going to try to help bring the Gristle to the masses a little bit. And so he's like, you should be, he wants to help out, kind of raise the profile and so on and so forth, which I appreciate. And so initially he said, well, let's do a compilation record from all of your various records. And I got like 20 records and that stuff's all over the map. There's always a blues theme throughout, but there's the chicken picking fricassee, the funkification, the pagan rock warlord activity, the psychotic fusion jams. So to be able to narrow that down to 10 songs is a tall order. So then I thought to myself, because a lot of times people come up to the merch table and they're like, what's the bluesiest record you have? And I say, well, that's hard because there's a little bit of it on all of them. So I thought, when he agreed, why don't we put out a blues compilation record? So then it was easy because then I just went through and picked out every 12-bar tune that I had, and there weren't all that many. Right? Because usually, I got to add this chord in. I got to put this ostinato pattern in there that does this craziness. So it was relatively easy to be able to narrow it down to a list of tunes. And he's like, these are great. You don't have any tunes in the can that you haven't released that are bluesy, do you? I was like, as a matter of fact, I do. I had recorded a couple of these old Muddy Waters tunes that we were going to do kind of a blues-oriented record anyway. So I played him this version of Can't Be Satisfied, where I'm playing slide, and it's pretty raucous. And he's like, this is great. We'll put this one out. He goes, it'd be great if we could do some kind of a duet thing, even though it was already done and in the can. And he goes, what if we get Larry McRae to sing and play guitar with you on it? I'm like, awesome. So I do a duet with Larry. We go back and forth. He plays on it. It turned out magnificently.
Wow.
So I delivered that, and he's like, boy, you don't have another tune in the can, do you? I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I do. So I had this version of You Can't Lose What You Ain't Never Had, which I put this cool kind of turnaround riff in it to make it different. And I was like, I'm not really pleased with my vocal on it so much. He's like, this is what we're going to do. He goes, we're going to have Jimmy Hall sing it, and then we're going to get the Memphis Horns to play on it. I'm like, awesome.
Wow.
So within like a half hour, he made the calls, and within a couple of weeks, it was done. And so those are going to be the two singles, if you will. And he's got the marketing machinations down to a significant art form. So we're going to put those two tunes out as singles, and then there's going to be vinyl. It's going to be a shorter playlist of the blues compilation. Then there's going to be a CD that'll be more inclusive of a whole bunch of stuff. And that'll be coming out in November of this year. And then I'm going to do some of the Almond Bat. We're going to go out on the tour out east. Do a bunch of stuff. Ended up in New York at the Iridium, and that's kind of be the release party, if you will, as much as those things exist these days, And then I'm going to do some of the Almond Betts dates, and then we're doing some of the after show parties as the Koch Marshall Trio, and Devin and Dwayne Betts will hopefully come over and do some tickling with us after the show.
Amazing.
And the record's just simply, and it was like, what should we call it? It was like, that was a hard one because it was going to be blues. Like, well, how about Gristle Blues? Easy enough. He's like, what's Gristle? That's your thing, but this is something different we're doing. So then we went back and forth, and I said, how about just say it what it is? Blues. So it's going to be Greg Koch Blues. It leaves no doubt.
Nailing it on.
As to what's happening. So that's what's happening with that. And so we've been incorporating a few of those tunes into the set list. And what's amazing to me is that you can come up with all kinds of clever things. And and as I said earlier, I've always felt the need to kind of expand upon the blues progression and just make it a little different because it's a well-worn path. Am I right? And but it's so funny when you play simple 12-bar tunes. Just that simple framework, you can be yourself and be as outlandish and do your own thing as much in that framework, but it just resonates with people in a way that sometimes more sophisticated stuff, they're like, but you play that simple stuff and ram it down their throats and they take it. They slake their thirst for sweet blues musics.
Can you show us the turnaround then?
Oh,
you said it had an unusual turnaround.
Oh, yeah. So the tune is kind of, I added this kind of so the tune's like then it just starts in the parade. That's the basic form, but just different enough. It's actually a Jimmy Page thing, but it sounds cool because I sent the stuff to the guys from the Memphis Horns, and I thought, should I give them some ideas first? Should I? Because I probably could have. I remember arranging for horns back in the day, but I thought, they know what they're doing, and they came back, and it was the perfect part, and I thought. Maybe they'd catch that, maybe they wouldn't, but it was nice. Just every now and again they did that part, but they accentuated the chords and that turnaround. It's freaking awesome. Well done, fellas!
When you played it first, that doo-be-doo-be-doo, I assumed that would be a horn line.
Yeah. And they did do that, and they did a great job. And then Jimmy Hall sang the bejesus out of it, and then he played some harp as well. And his harp playing is exquisite. For those of you who don't know, Jimmy Hall was the lead singer in Wet Willie back in the day. The first time I actually heard him perform, he was playing with the Dickie Betts had this band in the 80s after the kind of the Allman Brothers were on hiatus, and it was with him and it's Dickie Betts, Jimmy Hall, Chuck Leavell, David Goldflees on bass, Butch Trucks on drums, and that was an awesome ensemble. And then Jimmy went on to do a bunch of stuff with Jeff Beck. He was on a few different records and toured with him and so on and so forth. And he's like 70-some years old and gets out there and just commands the stage, sings like a demon. He plays sax, he plays harp. Wow. He's a force that cannot be stopped. And the world is a better place having Jimmy Hall in it.
And what do we say that is, November?
November 24th is what we're aiming for. Things are subject to change, but that's, if you check out the portals, like gregkoch.com. We had someone the other day, is like, how do I know your UK dates? I'm like, well, other than the fact that I've put them on this particular Instagram page 1,000 times. There's also a place called the internet where you can go on and go, Greg Koch tour dates, like I do when I want to say, I was like, hey, Neil Young's on tour. I wonder where he's playing. Neil Young tour dates. Pow! Thanks, internet. I didn't go on his webpage or on his Instagram account. Neil, where are you playing? Wondering if someone can chime in to let me know, hit me to what's happening. I need that special touch. Kind of like Toby's final touch at Toby's Roastery. Toby's final touch. Sounds kind of terminal.
Yeah.
But delicious.
One last question then about Dwayne. Does he play as loud as Dickie? So
Dwayne, no, he does not. It's weird when you're sitting next to Dwayne Betts, that is, and he plays a super reverb, and he's got a little analog man driving, but he doesn't hit it all that often. It's just that Les Paul into that super, and it is a glorious damn tone. And like Dickie, mostly neck pickup, occasionally in between position. But what's so wild is that he looks and plays and sings so much like the old man. But it's not like an affectation. It's just who he is.
Yeah,
and it's so bizarre, but awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of like, what? This is just like we're getting a yes and. You know what I mean? It's awesome. And he's such a nice guy. So it's so much fun doing those gigs. It's kind of like, well, I never got to play with the Allman Brothers, but you know what? This is pretty damn awesome.
Pretty close.
Amazing.
We had Warren Haynes in a few months back, and he tells similar stories, but particularly about how loud Dickie Betts was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing stories that like when they play Alpine Valley, which is by my house, well not next door, but in the area, is that he was so loud on stage that he wasn't in the mains in this massive place. And but he was Dickie Betts.
Dickie Betts,
a pirate.
Exactly.
How are you?
Warrior.
How are you finding volume these days? Can you still play at an acceptable
We're loud.
level? Yeah.
We're a loud band.
Good.
Beautiful.
And often people are like, "Can you turn down?" And we're like, "Yeah." Well, luckily, I'm using the Tone King Royalist at this point in time, and I basically use it cleanish. I use it on the JTM 45 setting. I run it on about 3.5, maybe 4, so it's just starting to give in when I kind of lay into it. But with the attenuator on it, I can kind of gauge the room. So in this tour, we've experimented with different things. I like to just, if I'm in a really small place, and when you're on tour, you have no idea. It's like, where's this place? And you go into the place, like the people in the front row are just going to be decimated. And so I'll just turn the amp around. So I do where I turn it around and face it to the wall and just crank it. And then I can at least hear the backsplash and I can turn it up. So I do that. We tried doing it on the side of the stage, pointing at me, but then poor Toby was getting annihilated with the power of sweet, sweet blizzard of nails.
With the power of the backsplash.
Exactly. And I've tried a thing where I have it on the ground and then I bring the Imperial along as kind of a spare and I just put the Imperial in front of the other one as a cool looking baffle. And then I just dime that. So we mess around with different things. I think my favorite thing to do just to be, to be nice to the crowd, instead of just pummeling them, is at home I've got a road case and I put it on the road case and I turn it around and then I can hear the backsplash. But although I do have an extra extension cabinet too that I use with it. It just depends on the room, but we're trying to be nice, but
not at the sacrifice of feeling it.
Not, exactly. Yeah. We like to play, and it's like and people are like, "My God, you're so loud." It's like, listen, I've been to shows and played with guitar players who are deafening, and I don't care what band you're in. A 50-watt amp is not going to deliver threshold of pain for the most part, right? Yeah. So I always say, if you were in a club this size and all the bands that we looked up to and we try to match the ferocity of, if we possibly can, as Allman Brothers, Cream, Led Zeppelin, Hendrix, and so on and so forth, they would have been deafening. So, we go in and we do our thing, and we'll occasionally have people like, "I left after the third song." I'm like, "See ya, sorry." You know what? You can choose a different place to sit in the place. You don't have to be in front of the scalding zone. But, it just kind of is what it is. And in this day and age, if you go to a gig in a small club with a rock band and you don't plan on maybe wearing earplugs if it's necessary, then, as my wife would say, that's on you.
Have you ever tried the baffles? The plastic?
Yeah, you know what? I have. I remember there was a guy in Austria, Huvi, who makes the D-Flex.
Yeah, they're great.
And that's worked a bit, but it's, I don't know why I just don't like it. It's just kind of.
They don't fit in the van anywhere.
Well, there you go. And Joe sent me some of his that he uses. I was talking to him. I was like, we're getting complaints about loud. What do you do for those baffles? And he goes, "Oh, I use these baffles." And he sent me some, and I got them. And then I opened it up and it says, "Well, you got to wear something so that you don't get your smudges on this." And I was like, that's already too much information for me to know. And so I didn't have a chance to even assemble them yet. But yeah, I like it all to swirl around in a great tone mist.
We've always said the volume is not the problem. Crap tone is the problem.
Yes.
And if you got a great tone, like, when we go out and play, we're loud.
Right.
But it's this big, glorious hug of a thing.
Right.
But I've been to shows where the guitar wasn't loud and I still want it to come down even further.
Right.
So.
Yeah, if it's the blizzard of nails.
Exactly.
But the other thing we noticed too is that, and this is not to cast aspersions on all sound reinforcement professionals, but a lot of times we know how to mix ourselves from the stage.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? So we've gone into rooms where it's like, "Oh, there's a vocal-only PA tonight," and we mix ourselves with people like, "It sounded awesome." I was like, well, that's because we know how to play as a unit, and and so on and so forth. But a lot of times, you'll play and they'll mic everything up and they're like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. And then it just becomes deafening because they've got everything mic'd up and they're trying to figure it out. And it just makes it even more loud than it probably actually is.
Mm.
And as a result, that's on him or her at the sound console.
The old, I'm not happy until you're not happy.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly correct.
Let's talk about this orange monster then.
Yes.
Come on. This is this is new. It's on its way in large form and small form from Jam Pedals. Obviously, who else could it be from?
Correct. Well, if you recall, last time I was here in the before times,
Before times.
I wasn't really using all that many pedals. I had my Koch amp that I was using at the time that had the harmonic vibrato on board. I had my Gristle King pedal.
But you came here and you saw all this. You went, I've got to get involved.
I thought,
how do I get involved?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just exactly what happened. And then during the great pestilence of COVID-19, we were doing 4 or 5 live streams a week from my lovely domicile. We took over this back room of my house.
The orange room.
Known as the orange room.
The orange room. I love the orange room. Thank you for the orange room.
Oh, well, thank you.
It's very important to me during that and to so many of us during the dark times.
Well, thank you. We had fun doing it. My wife didn't have fun because we took over that back room. And at first it was okay because Dylan and I would just fit in that room. And then Wildwood started sending me guitars. And if they would send me strats, it tells you we live in an old house. Of course, not old by English standards, but it's a 1908 house, and the wiring is funky. So I realized if I wanted to get rid of the 60-cycle hum, I had to point in this one direction. So I cut the room in half. So then Dylan had to set up in the room adjacent, which was the dining room. So next thing you know, Wildwood's sending me all these guitars. So my front entrance of the house becomes like the shipping department. Nice. So I got boxes aplenty, and now we've encroached upon the dining room in addition to already having taken over the orange room. So my wife's like, you need to get this stuff out. And so that's why we tore down the old garage and we built a new place. And now there's a new orange room above my garage, which is a glorious place because all my stuff's up there and now I can just go out there and cause mayhem in my man cave. And now she has reacquisitioned the orange room.
Yes. Okay.
But during COVID, I was like, I wanted to mess around with some pedals.
Yeah.
So I started bringing stuff up from the basement. You go into your basement, as you guys know, you got pedals all over the place. You're like, what was this one again? What does this even do? Have I even played it? Sometimes you get pedals like, I've never even touched this damn thing. So started messing around with some different things. And then I put together a pedal board. And then when we started to hit the road in earnest, I realized I wasn't even using the overdrive on the amps anymore. I was using it as we hate to say it, a clean platform. And would kick it over the edge with the pedals and so on and so forth. And I always like to say it's like amps cranked, even preamp distortion sounds better under a microscope, recording. But doggone it, pedals feel better live. You know what I mean? You're playing, you want to kick it over the edge and scald some bass. All of a sudden you go skidoidal with that big old size 14, and next thing you know, you just see tears of flesh coming off the faces of the people in the front row. And let that be a lesson to them all. So I constructed a pedal board which had many jam treats upon it. The Wacko, their wah-wah pedal.
Yeah.
It's always been my fave. Their Univibe, which is the RetroVibe, love it. And of course the delay Llama, the delay Llama Extreme. And I started messing around with the different fuzzes they had. And I've known since I think we talked about 20 years ago. I remember I was going to the Gothenburg guitar show. Yo, boy. And I got a message, I think it was on MySpace. That's how long ago it was.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, hi, I make pedals. I'm from Greece. I'm coming to the show. I'd love you have you check out my pedals. And I said, well, we're actually doing a gig with my band at this club on this night. And he brought me this full pedal board that was just chock full of goodness. And I used it for the gig. I was doing a little tap dancing, letting the good times roll. And I've just been a fan ever since. And at one point, they made me a multi-effect pedal that had, I don't know, maybe 6 pedals in it that looked like a tweed Fender amp. It was awesome. So I used that a bunch. And then I kept on checking out new different things. But then I had my road rig that I was traveling all over the place with in the States, my pedal board. And then they contacted me about, hey, how'd you like to do a signature thing? And we'll have one be kind of an abbreviated, kind of throw and go, essential items type of a rig. And then we'll have one where we'll have everything on it. And and the only thing that was weird is that obviously my Gristle King pedal is not a jam product, right? And I thought, well, for the big one, you know, if it's everything I would ever use, I'd have to have a Gristle King on it. So we made sure that Tim, who designed the Gristle King, was cool, and Fishman was cool because they make the Gristle Kings for me. Sorry, I just dropped my pick. I can pick that up later. But so we made the agreement to have it done, and they got the circuit together. So we made this 10-pedal beast. And of course, they were asking me for different names. And of course, I came up with a few different things, you know, involving Gristle and, you know, because that's kind of my brand, if you will. It seems weird to say your brand is Gristle, but, you know, whatever. The world is a strange place. Anyway, so he got back to me and said, we've come up with a name, the Koch Ness Monster. I thought, perfect.
You came up with it.
Yes.
Oh, I felt pretty sure that would have come from you.
No, that was them. And then we decided, so the smaller iteration is the Koch Ness Monster, and this is the Koch Ness Monster Supreme, which has everything on it but the doggone kitchen sink. And the only other thing that was a little weird is that, you know, I love that Neo Instruments ventilator as kind of my rotating speaker thing. But for the longest time, I wasn't using any rotating speaker thing because I got a Hammond player on the other side. You know, it's like you don't want, you know, faux Hammond.
Good thing.
Right. But then I started using it. I was like, actually, it sounds pretty cool. So, but what I realized is great is as I use their waterfall chorus as a kind of a faux Leslie type of. Plus, it cuts better. I have to say, it cuts better than the. I mean, the Neo still is awesome, but this, when we're playing, that seems to cut through quite a bit better.
Is it the same, Jens? So it's just the same as the standard.
Correctamundo. Which, of course, is a great pedal for other things. Like if you, what does this control do, by the way, the minus or plus?
Gives more intensity.
Yeah, so this one. And then it also does a vibrato, which is cool as well. Action. But so it's kind of like the vibrato, a little similar to the vibrato circuit that's on a type of Univibe. But I use it in this position like so to get that. And then, of course, there's your friendly neighborhood Harmonious Monk, of which you are well familiar.
Delish.
And then, of course, I already have the delay Llama on.
The reverse sawtooth?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Sounds glorious.
So you've got, there's no overdrive on here at the moment. That's just
the amp. I have the amp just, it gives a little bit. If I hit that second voice of my pickups, it gives it a little.
That's really nice.
That's
And so the delay Llama is always doing slap, yeah?
Yes. I just have that one on slap. Now I have some other kind of little handy ways of using the Supreme, which is right next to it. So there are some presets, but you can just use it as you turn it on and it's as is with the controls. Turn this off here for a second. Let's just like a slightly. Now the second preset I have on here is for my, if I add a little, I'm gonna add a little heat here just for the hell of it. To do my, it's one repeat, the Jimmy Page thing. The bow. I don't know what he was thinking. You know, he's on the road, he's trying to get a workout in, that with his vitamin H supplements. He's like, I gotta get a little thing in. Anyways, you get the idea. So I was actually messing around. This is years ago. I was, it's back when we used to leave messages on our guitar play or on our outgoing answering machines.
Right.
Remember that? Every guitar player went through it. If you say you didn't do it, you're lying.
Yeah.
At some point, you felt compelled to leave a guitar playing message on your answering machine. So I was messing around with it, and I didn't get this from Eddie Van Halen, oddly enough. I was at a NAMM show, and I heard Blue Saraceno in a room at NAMM, and it was back when, if you guys remember, in the early 90s, when Yamaha was doing an amp designed by Soldano. It was a tube amp. It was a cool little amp, and he was kind of hawking that stuff for a minute, and it sounded glorious. And I went into a room, and he had a delay on it like that, and was doing some, that's kind of cool. So the next time I was leaving a message on my answering machine, I had this kind of repeat going, and I just kind of went, I'm not in right now. If you leave a message, I'll get right back to you. And I left that message. People were going, dude, you should make a tune out of that. And so I did. And I called it Tonus Diabolicous. But anyway, so I keep that on, and that's a blast. So you can do all kinds of syncing. Also fun too if you're just doing like some comping and you have that repeat on, and maybe you add a little bit of our friendly neighborhood Leslie-ish type of thing, thanks to our friend the Waterfall. Just kind of So if you're playing with some acoustic artist playing windswept and sensitive folk music, and you want to just do some schnoidels in the background, then you're fired. But you know, you have fun while you do it, and that's important.
So the first for the rhythmic, that's a dotted eighth repeat, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you wanna cop some of that, you need a dotted eighth repeat in your count 4 dotted eighth.
Single repeat at the same volume as your actual guitar signal. That's the key. And then you're off to the races.
Yeah, and we hear that from Albert Lee. We hear it from all kinds of country and
yeah. Albert Lee used to do it. Les Paul, I think, was the first one to kind of do it in a guitar pop framework, and Chet Atkins also used to mess with that as well. But there's all kinds of goofy. This is kind of a cool one that is just a standard delay Llama extreme preset, but it's fun because it just sounds twisted, and I had to put it on here in my band. Fun?
Brilliant.
You're at the wedding, things are getting a little boring, throw that thing on, and next thing you know, divorce is imminent. So that's fun. Anyway, so over here, so that's the first batch. So obviously fun galore. And of course the wah, we know how that sounds, it's glorious. I'm not gonna put my big foot in front of you cats and try to stomp on that thing right now. That'd be a little weird, right?
Well, we're up for it. But,
But, you know.
We're happy for this to go wherever it goes.
I like it. So the RetroVibe. We're doing all your Hendrixy type of activity. Juicy.
You might want the back cave.
Yes, exactly.
Come on.
This is first after this, I take it?
That's correct.
Signal.
Yep. So it goes.
Yeah. Goes. Is there an order? It goes that way, does it?
Here.
And then that.
And then that.
And then up and then over.
So
Yep.
that way and then that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That is the path of the Koch Ness monster. And then here's the Gristle King. We've talked about that before. I've got it set to be, and I mess with the settings every now and again, depending on whatevs. Clean boost. Let me turn this off here. So the clean boost gives me this. If I'm doing that kind of stuff, I'll put that on. Then when I want the heat, I hit this on. The power of rock dwells in that box. So that's what I usually use for my pain and destruction mode. When I'm going for the jugular, I'll hit that button and the wrath of rock kind is at hand. But what I usually do is I'll couple the clean boost with the Gristle King with different things. The Eureka is a really cool fuzz. It's kind of a combination between a fuzz face and a big muff.
All right.
Little incremental thing here gives you like rotund low end, medium low end. It's like Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear. And I like Mama Bear. And just enough low end to rattle your polyps, but not give you something, too uncomfortable. So if I hit that on top of it, we got viscous and juicy. Makes a little bit of noise, but that's what fuzzes do.
Fuzzes do.
It sounds like a crank plexi, but not loud.
Yes. Love it.
With all that
Yeah.
up there. It really does.
Yeah.
It really does.
It sounds glorious. Now, this device right here is the Lucy Dreamer, which is kind of their take on a tube screamer, but there's a great mix control that you can go between the dry signal and the affected signal. So I typically will couple that also with my clean boost on my Gristle King. And the reason I do that is because the overdrive on the Gristle King is great for like bridge pickup, but when you're on the neck pickup, it's a little woolier. So when I hit this, it's more of that. That tube screamery type of thing, where
yeah.
you got a little bit more of that slicing and dicing. And then there's also an overdrive or boost on So that's like a nice variation of overdrive. So depending on what I'm doing, I'll use that versus the overdrive on the Gristle King, or use the Eureka for a little bit of a, like when we do Spanish Castle Magic, I hit the Eureka and have fun with that. But this little rascal right here was something I wasn't quite anticipating to be so awesome, and it is the Boomster.
The Boomster, yeah.
And because this adds a boost, but also a little bit of slice on the top end, which is nice. So I hit that, and that's been kind of my go-to kind of chicken picking-ish tone when I do that. You Sorry, I lost control there for a minute. The monster took control of my brain. But here, that's got a little bit more of that slicey slice on the top end.
Yeah.
So I have a
Fabulous.
veritable, it's a veritable smorgasbord of tone in one fell swoop. So, you know, in a given night, I might have two of the pedals on at the same time.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just, but they're there if I need them. And it's a blast. I go to the gig, plug in one to the front, one in the back, set the amp. It takes me 2 minutes to set up. And after the races I go. And the thing is, I haven't really been missing reverb lately.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, I've just been enjoying not having it. And I just use a little bit of slap, or sometimes I don't even do that. So when I do kind of we do a version of Red House because I've done that forever. And there's a version of it on this upcoming blues compilation thing I was telling you fellers about. And so we started off and I play the new S-style guitar, and with no effects on it at all. It's just pure, clean, unreverberated guitar. And I realized, you know what? That's a sound.
Yeah, man.
That is a sound.
It's a brave sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's right. It's so forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I'm just trying to figure out what's made it into this then.
Okay, so here we've got Lucid Dreamer.
Lucid Dreamer.
We've got Eureka Fuzz. We got Harmonious Monk. And we have Delay Llama.
It is a bit of an honor. Like, we just have to say, it is a bit of an honor to have made both.
Well, it's an honor to play such a glorious implement.
To have made both units.
Yes.
When are these out?
This end of the month, of this month, and this end of the year.
So there may be people screaming at the screen now.
Yes.
Why on earth don't you just get a Boss GT 1000 or some digital machine? Why do you need all this?
Well, there has been some interesting commentary on some of the videos that we've released so far. And I don't respond to things.
We know the answer, by the way. It's a rhetorical question.
I'm an old school dude, old school pedals in front of an amp, away we go. That's not to say that all those different things aren't great for a variety of different things, but just because they work for you in your bedroom doesn't mean they work for me when I'm mounting stages like a mighty stallion across this fair world, melting faces. It's not the same. I have needs that are different from yours. I don't foist mine upon yours. I don't come in your bedroom and say, hey, digital dude, what are you doing? You're a troglodyte. Behold the splendor of what real dudes use. I don't do that. So don't go on my thing saying, well, why don't you just use my this for that? Because I don't! Sorry, did that answer your question at all?
I think that just about covered it, yeah.
I get excited sometimes.
Man,
Really?
Man.
We hadn't
things.
never noticed that. What I also dig is that by manipulating the volume control on the guitar, by stacking up a couple pedals there, you're getting textures that we might associate with much more complex modern machinery.
Yeah.
So there's one of the things you were doing there, which kind of sounded like that thing that Ariel was playing the other day with the pitch
Yeah.
Yeah.
shift caused by the different delay times and all that.
plus with these types of things, there's an element of mayhem involved.
Completely. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and mayhem is key. I mean, some of my favorite, it's like, we've gotten to the point now where I think that there's so much sophisticated stuff. They're like perfecting the nice guitar sounds. It's like the perfect metal sound, the perfect blues sound. The sounds I like sound like the shit's ready to blow up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
When you listen to Voodoo Child by Hendrix, it sounds like war is beginning in some kind of parallel universe. And you can never, Stevie Ray's version was awesome. But does it sound like the end of the world is happening? No, it does not.
Yeah.
Because Jimmy was like, try this. And he just made it happen. Why? Because he was a wizard.
Yeah, indeed. We
We were just at his apartment. And we were down
yeah,
in Londinium.
right,
We went over there. It was awesome.
Yeah.
What a vibe factory.
Indeed.
And then we went to the place where, of course, he died, which was a little bit of a downer, but that was wild. We went there, and then we stopped on our way to the gig to Jimmy Page's house. He wasn't in.
He wasn't in?
Okay, he didn't come out and say, fellas, what's happening? Come on in.
Fellas!
Didn't happen. But you know what? There's always next time.
Indeed.
Yeah. See what he says. Right, T-shape objects we know about from
Yes.
Reverend.
Yes.
One of the things we talked about in the last video with Greg was the fact that it is a percentage bigger.
Yes, it's like between 2 and 3%. I don't know why he always says 2 and 3%. It's like, can we get a little more? Like
Yeah.
2.3%.
Instruments exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's just a slightly, it fits in regular guitar cases, and it doesn't make, more diminutive individuals look, like they're taming some larger creature. But it does alleviate me a little bit from hearing people say, is that like a ukulele? Is that 3/4 style guitar? Typically the person trying to tell me about what digital device to use to usurp this contraption. Not that I'm judging, okay? Anyway, so we did that with, I don't think you guys saw this one. This is the, oh shit, sorry. This is the set neck version that we did of the T-style guitar, but when I did new P90s with Reverend, so again, 2 voices, no noise, more of the Gibson scale, ebony fingerboard. I'll just plug this thing in.
With Fishman?
With Fishman, yeah. And this one I usually keep tuned to open G, tune gate. Whoa, listen to that beast. Ready Cacao. But you hear it's girthsome.
That's amazing.
So that's what I use for all of my slidey type activities. I keep it in open G. And I did use this guitar. We put out a record called Sweet Gristle last year. And I used one of these T-style guitars, which we called the Gristle 90. And played it, did like a live in the studio thing at down at Sweetwater in beautiful Fort
nice.
Wayne. If you want to get down on the ground, Fort Wayne.
Very good.
Go, you guys, you need to go there. The world is centered around Fort Wayne, Indiana. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh.
No one else did either. It's all right. So, but anyway, it's a fun place to visit. And we went there and we recorded some stuff. I used that guitar on it. So if people want to hear, there's videos online of us doing that. And there's a record that you can peruse online. Now this beast, this was kind of an interesting thing because I worked on the pickups with Fishman for what they call single width. They're Strat pickups, and I liked them quite a bit. And Reverend actually put out an instrument that for Gil Paris, Gil Paris from New York, great guitar player, and he had a few different signature guitars with Reverend, but they did kind of an S-style guitar, and they put his pickups in it. And it had the Wilkinson tremolo, and they sent me one, and I loved it. It was fun to play Strat because they stayed in tune. Because my experience is I played Strats for years as my main guitar, and finally I just got sick of it. Got sick of, I'm not MacGyver, so I'm not messing around with, tools and soldering irons and various different lubricants to make sure that the strings flow back and forth so you can use the whammy bar like some kind of a hooligan. So at one point I just said, I'm going back to tellies because I'd like to say, the end of time, there will be Telecasters and cockroaches, and the Telecasters will be in tune. But I did have during the Cove especially, I started messing around with Strats again. And I always record with Strats So I said to Ken from Reverend, I said, let's mess around with one of these doggone rascals and see what we got. So we decided to do the larger body. Pickup wise, it was kind of interesting. I've kind of always had kind of a complicated relationship to the Eric Clapton Stratocaster.
Right.
There's things I love about that hi-fi clean sound. Not real crazy about the 25 dB boost thing that happens where it totally over, it gets real nasal. Although if you're on the bridge pickup with that thing on, it sounds awesome. But Clapton never does that. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if you guys recall during the Cream reunion, they opened up with I'm So Glad. And he goes into the solo, and of course he's on like the middle position or one of the other, and he hits the 24 dB boost or whatever it is. And of course it gets fat and woolly, but it's that sound he usually gets, which people love, and that's fine and dandy. But he accidentally hits the toggle switch to the bridge, and you're like, oh my God, there it is. It's there. Just keep it there and do your wizardry. And he's like, oh, I better. Like, thanks, Eric. Anyway, so I like the sound of those, and especially the lace sensor version.
Yeah.
They had a thing. They had a relationship with that circuit that had a thing.
Yeah, the golds.
Exactly.
They're amazing.
Exactly. Those in conjunction with that Clapton preamp was a magical thing. So I was messing around with, I bought one of those guitars again because I've had a few and I sell them. And so I got another one. I was really having fun with it. And I thought, well, it'd be cool to do something along those lines. But I always felt like the clean sound on those guitars, because they're hotter guitars than a regular Strat.
Yeah.
The low end gets a little farty and the high end gets a little sizzly. So I thought, well, it'd be cool to kind of mess with that a little bit. And then because the fluents, how they work, you get that second voice. I wanted that second voice to be maybe that boost like halfway up, you know?
Right, yeah.
So you get a little bit more meat and a little bit more volume. So we messed around and we came up with these. So right out of the gate, here it's pushing the amp a little bit more than the other guitar. Now, I don't usually use that on the clean side. I usually use that when I have some gain on already and I want a little bit more. But all the different settings sound great. Of course, the obligatory. And then, of course, the bridge got more meat. So if I use that with any degree of sorcery over here, you get the idea with the boom. So it tickles my Strat fancy.
And I bet it's still in tune.
Yep. Yeah.
Near enough.
Yes.
Is there a battery in there somewhere?
There is. So if you look at the input jack, there is a 1/4 inch
Oh yeah.
scenario, and then there's that mini USB. I always say looking at the Fishman input jacks, kind of like looking at a cat's butthole. Not that I do that regularly, but sometimes I have no choice. You know, Luna gets up in the morning, she says, check this out.
Yeah.
What? Anyway, so it's nice to be able to just plug it in and charge there. Now, a lot of people are like, what happens if you run out of juice at a gig? And I'm like, well, with the Fluence pickups, with these pickups and also with my T-style pickups, for like an 1.5-hour charge, you literally get hundreds of hours of playing time.
Oh, wow.
So if you run out of juice at a gig, that's on you. There's a theme going here. Do you sense that?
I feel it.
So yeah, and the thing is, you could plug it in if you actually ran out of juice. But I change strings after every 3 gigs. If on my main guitar that I'm using, I'll push it because I play this for a couple of tunes a night.
Yep.
But on my regular guitar, I use the most. If I go past 3 gigs, I'm in danger of busting a string.
Right.
So usually when I change strings, I just plug in all my guitars and just charge them up. But even though that's just being overly industrious,
Sure.
because hundreds of hours of being plugged in. I mean, so I like to say, if your guitar runs out of fuel at a gig, you need to get into agent because a 300-hour gig is a little predatory. Dudley, you're a savage. What have you done to us? Booked us at a 300-hour gig. Oh, whatever. But you get the idea. So this is a glorious specimen. This one just came out September 20th, and it's available in this glorious blue hue, which we call Blucifer, of course.
Obviously.
And then there's an avocado burst, which is really cool.
Oh, nice.
Which is kind of looks like those old Burns guitars, you know what I mean? It's just got a kind of a weird thingy. And then there's also a 3-tone sunburst, because they do a wicked 3-tone sunburst.
Oh, nice.
And so that's all well and good.
But having a quick play of this before, and the neck is lovely. I love how you've kept that, what are we calling this? The
raised middle section.
The raised middle section, like just a really vibey thing.
Well,
It's
what
really
happened was
cool.
originally is when Joe Naylor was working on the T-style guitar for me, he knew I had this guitar that this guy, Mike Lamprin out in California, Ventura County Guitars, he made me a guitar that was a Firebird body with a bolt-on maple neck with tele controls, but it had a Johnny Winter signed Mojo Tone delicious neck pickup on it.
Right.
And I would play that online every now and again in little videos and whatnot. He's like, hey, that weird telebird thing you have? I said, yeah. He goes, what if we did a raised middle section on that guitar? I thought, awesome. And I didn't realize till after the guitar was done and out that my buddy Gene Baker's guitars always had that. And they were like T-style guitars. And he was like, hey, I saw your guitar. I was like, dude, we weren't copying you. It was totally because of this other thing. But Gene makes great guitars.
Gene does.
Is he still making guitars?
That's a good question.
Yeah. He did the B3 thing for ages.
Exactly
didn't he?
correct, which is all part of that Premier's Builders Guild back in the day.
Yeah,
Remember
and
that?
Robin played one of those for a minute.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. What strings do you use? Since we're talking about strings,
Free ones.
Free, yeah.
No, just
the best free strings.
I used to always say that, but then when I actually had to pay for them, I used Diodario, so then I got to deal with Diodario, and that was great. But I like those 10 through 46 NYXLs.
Okay.
They seem to get in tune quicker and last a little bit longer, but no more than 3 gigs.
Yes.
With the savage talons
Yeah,
being,
indeed.
those Albert King bends take their toll.
Can I just talk about the Savage Talent for a second? Whenever we get together, it is just freaking joyous and it's wonderful. It's always wonderful to see you.
Likewise,
But
my friend.
every time I hear you play, I'm always floored by what a great guitar player you are.
Oh, well, thank you.
Even if you were just a really sad individual, it would still be a pleasure just to sit and hear you play. But what really strikes me about the way you play, and your brain just seems to work so quickly that anything that you think, you can just bang and you're there. You're not having to process something and think about how that sounds. You're just so connected, and you fire these things out. It's amazing. I just thinking of the time that must have taken to get to a point where you are so comfortable that anything harmonically that happens, you're right there.
Boy, you know what? I was, first of all, I don't have any hobbies. Let's just be honest. It's like I don't golf. I don't bowl. I'm not in a dart league. It's like I play guitar and I reproduce, and I deal with the ramifications of reproduction every day of the week. And it's a glorious thing, don't get me wrong. But that being said, I just like playing all the time.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky early on that I always wanted to have my own band. So in doing so, I always had an outlet to try things on the bandstand, always, going back for now decades.
Yeah.
So I was always spoiled with having a platform of which I could explore and get paid. So I think that's really the thing.
Okay.
And then plus, over the years, obviously when I started having kids and I had to figure out other ways to make some loot so that, we could eat and stuff like that. Other opportunities came along, like, instructional stuff, the clinics with Fender, all that kind of stuff. And then later on the videos for Wildwood and so on and so forth. it's like I always saw that stuff as just I was doing my art under the auspices of doing what they wanted me to do for them.
Yeah. Okay.
So every time I had, for instance, a Fender would be like, "Hey, this year we got this new amp coming out and this new guitar, and we think you'll really dig it. Can we send it to you and see what you think?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah." So they'd send it to me. Inevitably, I would like it because they knew what I liked, and so I would write music and kind of focus my whole tone thing and for that particular year on whatever they had offered me. So to me, I'm just making art using their fun stuff. But sometimes dinner is the enemy of art. But we won't get into that. It's
an in gag.
That's an inside. That's an inside joke right there. Anyway, so I always saw everything that I did as an opportunity to explore and create and so on and so forth. So that's why I think there was never any time where it's like, I remember I would come back every now and again. I had this great harmonica player back home who plays guitar as well. He would book me for these duos. And I'd be traveling someplace and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing on Tuesday, whatever, the gig's from 6 to 9, dinner's included." I'm like, "Awesome," So I'd come and I'd play the gig and he'd be like, "Damn," he goes, "your chops are really up." I was like, "Well, what do you think I'm doing?" It's like he thought I go out in clinics and I got my little pocket protector with pens, like, "How many guitars did you like?" And it's like, no, I'm playing, I'm always playing. So, and when I'm at home, I play all the time. I mean,
but are you playing or are you working on stuff?
Well, it's a combination of all the above. So I usually, and it's not disciplined. I'm just going to tell you that. Usually I'll start off the day and I'll just play around a little bit, but then I might work on repertoire, either my own tunes, like make sure that they're in some semblance of performable position.
Yeah.
Some of the Chet Atkins or maybe a standard or two. I don't do a ton of standards, but there's a few that I've kind of have my arrangements of.
Right.
So I'll work on those. And the Chet stuff and any of that kind of Travis picking things that I have in my arsenal or solo guitar pieces, those are very muscle memory dependent. So I do have to practice those things. I like to tell that old Chet Atkins story of he used to say, if I don't practice for a day, I can notice it. If I don't practice for 2 days, my friends can notice it. And if I don't practice for 3 days, everyone can notice it. And of course, he's exaggerating a bit, but there are certain muscle memory things that you got to keep calibrated, right?
Sure.
So I'll practice that stuff. And then a lot of times I still play along with, my favorite thing of all time was playing along with records. And now I got my record player wherever I go. So I'll think, I really haven't, messed around with I'll hear like an Albert King thing and like, I'm going to play along with that just for the fun of it. And I'm not interested in trying to do exactly what they're doing. I'm just going for the world that they're in.
Sure.
And so, and then I might hear something, I was like, I should really learn that, So it's varied, but it's consistent.
Yeah.
So I do all these various different things and I just kind of, go where the need is most. And then, but it's just all fun to me anyway, so.
But that's the thing, because when I hear you play, especially being in a room with you playing, it's like, you can tell you love it.
Well, that's
you know what I mean, and it's like, and it just comes across, and it's just amazing. If you haven't seen Greg play live, you've got to go. It is truly remarkable.
Well, thank you.
And we've got dates happening in the UK. I'm not sure when this is going to go out, but
I think we'll be done by the time this goes out. But anyway, there are always dates.
Always dates.
Exactly. Just go to my website.
Hey.
Yeah. Tell us when you're playing, Greg.
Exactly. Tell it. Well, let me recite. But we got a big old tour coming in November in the States on the East Coast.
Amazing.
And my favorite thing too is like, how come you're not playing here? Like when we were doing this tour, I just got savaged. Like, it's not a UK tour, it's an England tour. I'm like, what? And they're like, how come you're not playing here? And I was like, because I've made a list, see, of communities that I will absolutely not play. And unfortunately, your stronghold is a place that's on this list. It's like we play where we get gigs.
Yeah.
And depending on how much in advance you book out, sometimes this was booked relatively short notice. So you get what you get.
Yeah.
And I like to say to them, people are like, I've come a lot farther than you have to go wherever in the UK to see us. If you're going a couple hours, I appreciate it, but I've flown on a jet aircraft over oceans in times of war and strife to get here, to eat your baked beans and your weird mushy sausages and your fish, which is delicious, by the way. But I'm just saying, meet me like not even halfway, like a fourth of the way, and come and rock and feast on the power of the night.
When I first discovered you, I remember because I was hounding you saying, when you come to the UK, when you come to the UK. And then finally, you've started coming more regularly. This is the first time since the dark times.
Right.
But hopefully we can get you back over here again. Man.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for letting us extrapolate on this glorious Koch Ness Monster Supreme. This is going to be out towards the end of the year. This one, I think, in the next month or so, right? This is coming out?
I was momentarily distracted because I see there's a send and return. Where is that then?
After the fuzz.
After the fuzz. So if you want to add more stuff in,
Yes.
Not required on here?
There's send return there as well.
Of course there is.
And there's stuff for expression pedals on this as well.
Yeah.
Expression pedal for the RetroVibe, for the Boomster, so you can turn this into a volume pedal.
Yeah.
Aha.
Check it out at jampedals.com. All the info will be there. And talking of gigs, you've got one to get to
We do indeed.
pretty soon.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. A pleasure as always.
So lovely to see you.
Daniel and I
again.
will be hurting tomorrow as as usually
There's a
happens.
few good rants.
Could you play us out, please, Greg?
Sure, I can do it. That was with no pedals on.
Amazing.